you've got to understand that ultimately, as an entrepreneur, the buck stops with you, right? Like
Right.
anything that happens in the business that you are building, it's ultimately all on you, whether you have a team or not.
Yeah. Let's
It's
talk for just
all on
I
you.
just wanna say something to that I think, we haven't addressed yet. The name of this podcast is "We Are Not Safe for Work."
Oh yeah,
And
we haven't talked about that, have we?
right. Well, but and it just makes me realize, do you think for most true entrepreneurs, there comes a point when they are no longer safe for work?
Oh yeah. I I would be a terrible employee now because I mean, like let's be honest, I would be the bad apple in the bunch
Yeah.
because if anything, like I as an employee, I was an excellent employee. And do you know why?
Why?
Because I was a people pleaser. I
Oh.
bent over backwards to make things easier for everybody else, even if it meant it was going to be much more difficult for me. And it wasn't from an altruistic place, it was because I thought that's how you're supposed to be
Oh.
in a corporate environment. I thought you were just supposed to do to make everybody else's jobs easier, right? So that's what I did. Did I complain about it? All the fucking time. Like,
I
like
love that you were doing this thing, but you were
all
complaining
the
the whole
time.
time. Yeah, totally.
I was complaining the whole time. My poor husband had to hear about like how my shitty coworker did this, this, and this, and then I ended up having to do this work. No, it wasn't. That wasn't the scenario. The situation was they asked for help, and I just did it all instead of just helping or saying no. I don't have the capacity. No was so hard for me to say for the longest time. And
Mm,
no is a complete sentence. No. You don't need to
yeah,
justify or explain. It's just no.
right. Okay, Nadja, what are we talking about today?
Well, today I was thinking we should do a little bit of a deep dive into how entrepreneurship isn't actually pretty. Like
Oh, it's terrible. It's a
the
horrible thing.
ugly side of it.
Yeah, I think it is honestly the worst thing that you could ever do. I
Right?
Whenever I would teach blogging, or I'd be brought up to give a speech about blogging at some conference or something, the first thing I always say is blogging is a terrible idea. I don't recommend that anyone do it. Please leave this room.
Oh my god.
And then I would pause and get real quiet, and people were pretty sure what the hell was next, right?
Right,
So
right.
I would pause and wait for anyone to leave the room. And I'd say, all right, fine. If you want this, I'll tell you everything you want to know about it. But I don't recommend it at all. This is
Yeah.
terrible. Don't do this. So,
Well, there's
how do you
just
feel?
it's such a glamorized thing, right? Like everybody's like, "Oh, entrepreneurship is just it's so fancy and like you have all this freedom and you're just like always happy, et cetera, et cetera." And I feel like especially recently, it's really refreshing to see other entrepreneurs actually showing the ugly side of what they're going through in terms of burnout and overwhelm and, indecision, doubt, all that kind of stuff because I feel like even when big name entrepreneurs talk about it, it's still with a sense of like dazzle. It's like, oh, yeah, this was really hard for me, but look how I overcame it. Nobody's actually talking about, I'm still stuck in the messy middle of all of it because I really don't know what I'm fucking doing anymore.
Yeah. I Do you think that people see it as glamorous?
I do. I really do because I was
Oh,
that person.
you did?
I
Yeah.
thought entrepreneurship was super glamorous and that all of my problems would be solved if I worked for myself.
Right. I I don't even know what to say. It's been so long. I've been doing this for so long that I can't even remember what I thought about it. I thought that, when I started it, I had been laid off from my corporate job, and I didn't know what to do with myself. I didn't have any real good job opportunities. I was kind of niched into something so super specific at that point that it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't even what I went to school for. And I saw an opportunity to join someone in creating a stupid online thing, a social media company. And I did it. And my main thought was, I hate getting up in the mornings because whenever I have to get up early and I don't get enough sleep, I get a migraine. And so I
Yeah.
thought to myself, if I can just not get a migraine, then everything else will be fine, which was the dumbest thought I've ever had in my life, because I didn't think to myself, oh, I also need to make some money consistently. Um, so yeah, I definitely don't think it's glamorous at all. It's terrible.
Yeah, I mean, now I don't think it's glamorous. Now I know and understand and see it in other entrepreneurs or business owners, how difficult it is, all of the different struggles that you go through, because most of it is I mean, not to be crude or anything, but it's a mental mind fuck, right? Like you go into entrepreneurship or working for a small business, working with a small business, you go into it with like idealized, oh, this is going to be so great. We're going to work so well together and everything's just going to be really smooth and we're going to figure it out like peacefully. But that's not what happens. And there's a lot of mental endurance that you need to learn in order to be able to make it work.
Well, and do you think that part of this is because we're sold the beauty of entrepreneurship? Because, see, here's the thing about all of this that is kind of frustrating and also beautiful at the same time. If you want to start let's just talk about a side hustle for the sake of this conversation. Let's say you
Right.
want to start a side hustle, because most of the time people don't just quit their job and go, I'm going to go do this thing. Most responsible people say, I'm going to start a side hustle,
Hmm.
and I'm going to grow that side hustle until it pays me equal to my current salary, and then we're going to quit. That's at least
Right.
what you and I have historically taught people to do back when
Yeah.
we worked at the Screw, right?
Yep.
So the problem is, in order to sell the training for how to do the side hustle, you have to have some optimism in your advertising. Because if
Yes.
you don't, then why would anybody ever buy the training on how to do the thing? And nobody wakes up and says, I know how to start a business, or I know how to do all of the steps in a business. And I don't think that has happened since Little House on the Prairie, because back then you woke up and there were some chickens around you and you're like, hey, here's some eggs, maybe I can sell them or eat them.
Right.
I don't know. I think you have to go all the way back to, we're being sold that this is a good thing,
Mhm.
that this is going to work. Here is your training on, because there is a business model in creating training on how to create training for how to make a Facebook ad,
Yep. No, you're totally right, yeah.
right?
It feels almost like an MLM in a way.
Yes, that's true. And I think that have you ever, one of the best things I ever went to in my entire life, the most fun I ever had, was at not Melaleuca. What is that original MLM where they sold house products?
Uh, Avon? No.
No, no, close. Um,
Mm,
oh God.
Tupperware?
No, 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 no. Maybe not that original, but back in the day, they would have these massive conferences. As far as I know, they still do, and you could go there and you could buy their cleaning supplies and their household items. Anyway, not Avon.
See,
Fuck
now
it.
I know now I
No,
wanna
I
know
need
what
to
it
know.
is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Biggest MLM. Uh, Amway.
Amway?
Amway. That's it.
It was the
Amway.
other A.
Yeah. One of the most fun things I ever did in my life was go to Amway meetings and Amway conferences. It was like going to church on steroids. And it was so awesome. And people were so psyched. And they're like, I'm going to sell Amway and I'm going to get rich like these people on this stage. It's kind of like going to what we have Funnel Hacker Live now in our circle.
Mhm.
I never went to
Mhm.
Funnel Hacker Live. Did you go? Have you been?
I think I went to one.
Oh, okay. What was it like?
I mean, pretty much, yeah, it really was. Oh, just to kind of segue a little bit.
Oh,
So my
please.
husband and I had this conversation last night. We were talking about when I first moved to the United States from Australia. I moved to a town right outside of the Fort Worth area called Burleson.
I remember
So
Burleson. Yeah, that's where I
yeah,
lived.
so at the time it was still a very small town. Like everybody knew each other kind of town.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I remember that like my friends had invited me to come to youth group on
Oh,
Wednesdays with
yeah.
them at their church. And I had never ever experienced anything like that. Like I was raised Catholic, so like old school, you go to a big beautiful old church and then you have your mass which has prayers, you sit, you stand, you kneel, all that
Very
kind of stuff, right? Just
formulaic.
very yes, exactly, very formulaic. And then I attend this youth group event at a Baptist church, and everyone's like, there's songs and there's dancing, and then obviously there's a preacher that does a sermon, a short one, for the youth group, but
Mhm.
it actually really freaked me out,
Oh, really?
like how intense everybody was about Jesus. So that's what funnel hacking reminded me of. Like it was like the youth group that I attended on steroids, where everyone's like hands in the air and they're,
Yeah,
one
holy
hand in the
roller.
air, one hand to their chest, like just like, oh yes, praise, hallelujah, all that kind of stuff. And the energy is really fantastic. It's like high energy and
Yeah,
you can't help but get caught up in it. But at
right.
the same time, like after I call it the conference high, like after you drop from that conference high, you're kind of sitting there and you're like, what exactly was that? Like, what did I just experience?
Right. Right. And I think that if that's your introduction into entrepreneurship, then the
Yes.
letdown is severe because
Oh
like
my gosh,
this
yes.
year I I took off um I'm so fortunate. I took off New Year's Day and I have worked literally today is March the 3rd and I have worked every single day since New Year's Day because our company's in crisis.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I know there's nothing glamorous about that. And you know
No.
that I can promise you, I know we know Russell Bronson is the creator of what's the software?
Oh.
Yeah, what is it called?
I'm like, you ask me, ClickFunnels. You ask me, and
ClickFunnels.
it just
Yeah,
like it dropped out of my head. I could
I
see the
know.
logo.
Well, all I could think of now was the name of his conference, Funnel Hackers.
Right,
I
right.
know for a fact I've seen enough of Russell Bronson's information online and videos and stuff
Mhm.
like that, that he's also had times where he worked nonstop like that too. But I can
Yeah.
promise you that he's not going to stand up on that stage at Funnel Hacker Live and go, guys, I need you to know that about a year ago, I didn't think ClickFunnels was going to make it. And I had to work
Mhm.
for 45 days straight to save it.
Yeah.
Nobody says that, right?
Yeah.
Because that's not a good ad to sell ClickFunnels. You want to sell ClickFunnels to be the solution to not having to code your own funnel. So it has to be
Yeah.
optimistic. And every time you start a business, a digital business, you have to buy a lot of tools.
Mhm.
And so those tools have to advertise to us in a positive way. They can't say, dude, I don't know. If you buy ClickFunnels this month, I can honestly fucking tell you, I don't know if it's going to work or not. My name's Russell Brunson, and I really hope, nobody's going to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think so. I just want to clarify to your point the fact that you were saying that Russell Brunson would not get on stage and say a year ago, ClickFunnels was in crisis. I think I think that is something that would be said, and this is a marketing tactic. It
Oh,
would be
shit.
shared after it has been resolved. nobody shares while they are in crisis. You know what I mean?
I do.
There was a saying, I think it was, oh, I can't remember who said it. And I can't remember the exact quote. This is a terrible story, but
Everything we were talking about is complete. Like, wait, what was that called? Yeah.
right. Yeah. Like, what was it? What was it? No, it was something along the lines of you do not help others from your open wounds. You help others from your scars. So it's
Oh,
only after you have healed can you go and help somebody else that may be going through the same thing that you went through recently, right? So I don't remember if I heard that in
but the
therapy
flaw with
or
that,
somewhere else.
I would say that's flawed in this case because it puts a scar puts a scar is shiny. You know, you have any scars on your body? I'm
I
sure you
have
do.
a shit ton of scars.
Right. And
I
so
am a klutz.
right. Like I look at my scar on from my knee surgery that is the scar itself I think is like 16 inches long, I think.
Mhm.
And it's massive and it's thick, you know, and it's this it raises up high and it's a massive, massive scar and it's shiny
Mhm.
because my skin is shiny there. I wish my whole skin looked like that, but it doesn't. I would look like a burn victim. I don't know nothing against burn victims, but I guess everything can't be shiny on your skin. But the
Right.
thing is, it's easy for me to point to that and go, yeah, you know, I got through this. But I think sometimes sharing the pain as it's happening is also incredibly valuable because you
Absolutely.
start to feel so isolated as an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
If you don't have someone
Yeah.
to talk to, if I didn't have someone to talk to as we're going through all of this pain and the
Mhm.
struggle, and listen, all we're doing, so I can clarify what everybody, so that I can share what we're dealing with. All we're doing is we hired new team members and we hired multiple people at the same time and we thought we knew how to run this business, but we realized everything was in our head. And then when
Yep.
we sat down with my wife and I, when we sat down and said, "Okay, let's write down how to do this," we were doing blogging completely different. So then we reached out to one of the existing team members and we said, "How are you guys publishing stuff on our business?" Their method was completely different than both of our methods. So for the last 30 days, I've done nothing but try to document and merge and discuss each step of
Mhm.
a 1,000-step process, you know,
Yeah.
and making sure that we're all now doing it on the same way because then you have to hash it out whose way's better.
Mm, exactly.
And
Yeah.
if I didn't have people to talk to along the way of actually doing it, and then afterwards saying, "Look at my beautiful processes and procedures," then
Right.
it makes it look too easy to just
Yeah.
show, "Hey, I didn't have any processes and procedures, and now I have some processes and procedures. You can do it too."
Mhm.
That I think is part of the problem here.
Yeah. And actually now that you're talking about processes and procedures, so I have been going through that for one of my clients. Like I'm building out their operations catalog. So
Yeah.
everything that I have built on the back end, the operational back end of their business, I do recordings and show my process, show my logic. And just like you said, most of it is in my head. Like it makes sense to me inside of my brain space.
Yes.
And then when it comes to explaining it, it's almost you forget that things that come easily to you do not come easily to other people. So you really have to break it down into smaller, granular, like more easily digestible steps. So there is a balance between figuring out how to explain your specific process and then figuring out how to make it accessible for everybody else. Because my
Yeah.
definition is different from somebody else's definition, but we're talking about the same thing.
Oh, we literally spent 4 days, and I don't mean just 4 like casual days. I mean, we got up at 7:30 and worked till 9:30 at night for 4 days, and we did nothing but create terms and definitions.
Yep. Yeah, that is
Because
so important to do. And I think
yeah,
that's a step that's missed in a lot of, operational, like on the operational back end. That's a step that's always missed because you just assume, well, I'm in the industry, you're in the industry, you should know what I mean by this, but different different companies call the same thing different things.
absolutely. And it turns out that different people in the same organization call things different things, but somehow
Yes,
still manage to
yes.
get things done. That's what's a miracle.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even know if this is really relevant to your original topic, but I feel like glamorizing entrepreneurship happens by the pure nature of expressing it, you know?
Mhm.
And I don't think that people understand the true loneliness or struggles.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, I don't want to make it all sound terrible either. I mean, you're about to go on a vacation and you didn't ask anybody, right?
I asked myself and myself said yes.
Yourself. Yes. Yeah, see, totally. Yeah. Um, so I mean there are definite advantages. I slept till 8:30 this morning because I wanted to.
Yeah.
Um, the end, you know. So
Yeah. No, I mean, so yeah, not to sound all doom and gloom about it, because obviously there are so many upsides to entrepreneurship, but I think it's really important for people to realize and understand that it's not like basically 95% of the time, it's going to be hard. You're going to be sludging through mud, is what it feels like. But that 5%, even if it's a small percentage, that 5% where everything is wonderful and just easy, like it makes that 95% of difficulty worth it. And I'm not saying it's 95% like hard where you want to give up constantly. I mean, you do want to give up constantly, but it's not to the point that it's so depressing all the time. You know, like there's different levels of low, if that makes any
you know
sense.
what I think about a lot when I think about this, especially as I've been going through this. I definitely draw from the stories of other people,
Yeah.
and I think about when Kate um, said something to me years ago. She talked about when they were growing EO Fire. They lived in San Diego at the time, and their apartment, she could see, I guess, the beach from her
Mhm.
apartment, and she would be there on a Sunday working all day long. Coincidentally, her story was about processes and procedures, on these things, and she could literally see her parents walking down the walkway in front of her, and her family that she loves to spend time with. She didn't live with them or anything, but she literally saw them walking by, and she couldn't join them, but she told herself, "That's okay, because right now I'm doing this hard thing that most people will never do." And
Mhm.
as we now know, they live the most amazing life of anyone I know,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, because she did that then. And I think
Right.
about that story, and I draw from that because I think there is a time as entrepreneurs, unless you've just created a job for yourself, there
Right.
is a time when you will start having more freedom.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like for me, I left my corporate job in 2016. Um, I formed my company in 2014, so it took two
Mm.
years. It took me 2 years to build my business, my side hustle, to the point that I had matched my corporate income, and I felt comfortable enough. And with the blessing of my husband, after extensive discussion of, okay, well, how is health care going? Like how are
Oh,
health
yeah.
benefits going to work?
Mhm.
Because at the time, my health insurance was much better. And especially because we had kids at the time too, like very young kids, because my daughters were born in 2011 and 2014.
Mhm.
So, like we needed really good health insurance to be able to take them in, because toddlers get sick a
Right.
lot.
And so do the
and that's
parents of toddlers.
and so do the parents of toddlers. And so
Yes.
that's part of what, in my head, I had this idealized vision of, I just had my second baby, and this was 2014. I had just formed my company and I was on maternity leave. So I was like, oh, this is perfect because I can build my business and then I can spend all this time with my kids and I can just be there for them and it's going to be beautiful. And sure, that's where it is now, but we are in 2023. And the idea I had was in 2014. I quit my
Right.
job in 2016. So it's
Right.
taken that long to be able to get to that point. And there's definitely a lot of like two steps forward, one step back is how it feels. It's like a dance, right? But every step forward is with the goal that I'm going to make it easier for my kids. Oh, I don't know if you can hear that,
I can.
but that is my, by the way, tech.
Uh-huh.
I know we discussed tech last time,
Yes.
but this is my dependence on technology. I need to have her remind me to eat lunch because I will continue working through. And the next thing I know, I'm looking up and I'm like, oh, it's time to pick up the kids from school. And all I have eaten today is coffee.
That happened to me the
Not
other
eaten, but
day. It was nighttime and I had the worst stomach ache I've had in forever. I can't remember the last time I actually had just like a true stomach ache. And I
yeah.
was like doubled over. I'm like, I am in so much pain. My stomach hurts so bad, Andy. I don't know if I need to go to the care now. I don't know what's going on. And she's like, well,
Oh
what
my
did you eat
gosh.
today? And I was like, eat. Nope, didn't do that. So she was like, here, let me give you this food.
That's your
And
problem
then I
there.
felt so much better. So I
Yeah.
understand that.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, so that's, I mean, just to kind of go back
Yes.
one conversation about technology, that's how dependent I am on technology because I needed to use the tools at my disposal in order to be able to create a schedule that worked for me and worked for my children because
Mhm.
they're involved in a lot of activities. And once again, that's the not pretty part of entrepreneurship because figuring out what that best schedule was going to be took a really long time. My daughter's about to walk in. You're going to hear a big crash.
Okay.
And here's another part of entrepreneurship when you have kids. It was super glamorized to me because I would see on Instagram and I mean TikTok now. At the time, it wasn't TikTok; it was something else or whatever. But just on social media in general, you would see all these business owners that have these like picture perfect. Oh, I'm on a picnic with my kids in a field, and look how beautiful it is. So you think, oh,
Mhm.
it's just so easy to do that all the time. But the reality is, it's not. There are sacrifices that have to be made in the beginning in order to figure out that work life integration. And I was always of the opinion that, okay, I didn't work a 9 to 5. I worked like an 8 to 6.
That's why I call it a corporate job. Yeah.
Okay, yes, corporate. So in corporate, you have your office hours, right? And
Yeah.
it is a block of time during the day, all consecutive, and that is what you're trained. That is what you learn, and that is what you bring into entrepreneurship because you do what you know.
Right.
And I always felt like I was doing something wrong when I tried to break up my workday
Yeah.
in terms of, oh, I'm going to work because I'm not an early person. Like I do not like calls before 10 a.m.
Same.
because half the time I'm just cranky and I will just like sass anything you ask me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so in the mornings, if I am going to do any work, I like to do the things that don't need to involve anybody else. Like these are the tasks that I just need to do and I can take care of and nobody needs to be notified about it. Nobody needs to be involved in this. Like if I have that dedicated time, then I'm going to do that. And then I'll go off and do school drop off. I'll come home, I'll walk the dog. And, that could be anywhere from an hour to maybe 3 hours, right?
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
depends. And then I come back and I'm like, okay, now I have my focus time. And my focus time is 2 hours. I've blocked off 2 hours. Ideally, I like blocking off 4 hours of focus time. But
That's
once
a long
again,
time.
well, that's what I was going to say. Once again, it depends on my schedule. So I like looking at my schedule at the beginning of the week to figure out, do I need to do um, the effective, which is the shorter focus times, or do I need to kind of bunch everything and try to do like a 4 hour block because I need my Thursday and Friday a little bit more flexible or whatever it may be. But just the fact that
Sure.
I can make those decisions and I can make those choices so that it fits with my lifestyle, not the other way around, not my life fitting in around work, right? Because
Right.
that's what we're used to. I always felt like I was doing something wrong. Like it felt like I was doing something illegal. Going to the grocery store at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, I think someone's going to come up to me and be like, "Shouldn't you be at work?" Like I felt like I would get in trouble.
You know what's funny about that? just a little aside about that. When COVID happened and everybody started working from home, I was so offended because I had a perfect life like you, where
Oh
I would go to the
God.
grocery store on a Tuesday,
Uh-huh.
right? And there would be nobody there. And
Right.
now there's no rules anymore about when people are at work. And I'm all like, can't you people go get a job? What are you doing here? This is my time to be at the grocery store. This is
Right.
entrepreneur time to be at the grocery store.
Yes.
And now
Yes.
there's no traffic patterns. It's
Mhm.
very annoying. And I just don't think it's right. If you're going to have a corporate job, just go do your thing and let me have some time, because I'm going to be working when you're not, So
Right,
it's
right.
like, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I get my second wind in the evenings too. So, typically, like my brain capacity, my decision making capacity is spent by 2 o'clock. Like 2 o'clock is stretching it too,
mhm.
but that's why I try to make all of my big decisions much earlier in the day because
Yeah.
I know myself now. I didn't know before, but now I know, okay, I need to work during the times that are optimal for me, not during the times that everybody else says is the optimal work time, because that doesn't work for me. And I think that's something that should always be expressed or explained, or, people should just be made aware that you don't have to follow the rules of everybody else when it comes to entrepreneurship. Like, the whole point is so that you can optimize your own capacity. So if your capacity to work is only 4 hours a day, then you do that. Like, that's what you do. But if those 4 hours are incredibly efficient, you get shit done, and you get meaningful stuff done, then 4 hours is all you need. Like, the 8-hour workday is so antiquated because you fill that space, or you fill that time with,
Well, isn't it
bullshit work.
Parkinson's law that a task expands to the time allotted?
I don't know which law it is, but yeah, something like
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I think you're absolutely right. So, do you think there is, like, if you were talking to someone new, let's say that someone came in and joined our podcast and they were thinking of going into entrepreneurship, what is the first thing that you would advise them or question that you would ask them?
Well, the first thing that I normally ask people is, where's your mind at? Like, how is your mindset? How is your mental resilience? Because I feel like that is something that you need to know about yourself before jumping into any sort of entrepreneurship. If you come into the business, or if you come into the industry and you have like a really negative mindset and you're just like, well, I'm not good enough, I don't have enough knowledge, I don't have this, I don't have that. Like, if you're just like, no, 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 then yeah, you're not going to succeed, because you need to be in a positive mindset, or at the very least be able to switch out of it in order to make it, because there's nobody telling you what you need to do and when. It's all internal. You set your own deadlines. You set your own goals. Nobody's telling you you have to achieve this goal by this date, or you need to complete this task by this date. You are doing it on your own. So if you're a negative Nancy, you're just going to keep procrastinating, which is me.
Well, I feel like you're conflating too that, I think you're combining two things, by the way. It sounds like
I probably am, yeah.
attitude, but also being self-driven. Because,
Yes.
like you said,
Yeah.
if you can't complete things in a time, the first thing that I ask people is, "Do you have any money?" Because
Oh, yeah.
because think about it. I feel like most people have this unrealistic idea that they're going to start a business and then next week they're going to start making a living.
Yeah. Got to
But
spend money to make money, baby.
well, that's true, but also you got to live until your business makes money. So you got to make a living. I think that a lot of people get into a panic mode because they think they have a really good business idea, and maybe they do. Maybe it's
Mhm.
fucking amazing, but it takes time to make money. So therefore, if you're not making a living and paying your bills in the meantime, then everybody starts to panic. And then that
Yeah.
panic leads to bad decisions that leads to burnout.
Right.
And so I feel like it starts with, yes, you're not wrong. I feel like it starts with multiple things at once. The things you
Yeah.
just brought
Yeah.
up, and how are you going to survive until your business makes money?
Mhm.
And
Yeah, like
I feel like
don't
people,
go quit your job right away because I think that's something that's often told like, "Oh, you need to go all in and commit. So quit your job so you can go all in on your side hustle or whatever." And I
yeah,
feel like that's terrible advice.
if your business model involves a launch, so let's say it's a course, that you're going to
Mhm.
create a course on how to, um,
Do X, Y, and Z.
yeah, do X, Y, and Z, and it's a side hustle, and you have a positive launch, and you made some good money. That's awesome. But that doesn't mean your second and your third launch are going to be as profitable until you really
Mhm.
know that you really have this nailed down. Don't quit your job on the first one.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, maybe we're also thinking about the things that we were advised when we were starting out, so it may be very different. It may be a very
Yeah.
different landscape now, especially with the shift of, after COVID happened and people were working from home and trying to figure out different ways of making additional money because now they're working from home and,
They had more
for
time.
they had more time. And for some people, working from home made them way more efficient at their existing jobs. So now they had free time, or not free time, but they had all this extra time because they've completed their work tasks. And do you know why some people did so much better working from home? Because they don't have the distractions of the office. I know that when I go into an office, so I have clients, I have local clients that have office spaces. When I go into their offices, for me personally, that's my social time. Like, that's my time to kind of chat with them. It's my water cooler time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But when I don't have those constant interruptions, and I think that was the reason why for the longest time I was working so many hours, and I always thought, "Oh, well, it's because I'm a hard worker." I am such a hard worker. I work longer hours than everybody else. No, it's just I had constant interruptions and distractions, which made my task 10 times longer than it should have been. So on the days where people didn't know that I was actually in the office because my suite was on a different floor. So if they thought that I wasn't in the office, I got so much done and I would feel so accomplished, and it's so proud of myself. But I didn't realize until way later down the line that, well, the reason that I was so productive and successful is because I didn't have somebody knocking at my door or coming to my desk every 15 minutes interrupting me. And then once they leave, I have to reset to
Yeah.
try to get back into the task that I was working on.
Yeah. That's weird. That's interesting. I don't know. Working is a weird thing, especially like you said. Also getting things accomplished in an environment like that is also socially driven. So going back to what you said earlier, can you get things done if no one is telling you to do it?
Right. Yes.
Because there's a lot of social pressure that we rely on as a society. Nobody would
Mhm.
stop at a stop sign if they knew for a fact that nobody was going to be around them for 3 miles,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
So, um
It's also the shopping cart theory, right?
oh, tell me.
Well, the shopping cart theory is, I mean, they say that it was a social experiment. I don't think it was a social experiment. I think it's just been conflated into that. But the people that, like, nobody, you're not forced to put your shopping cart back into the corral after you use it. There's nobody policing that. Nobody's telling you
Right.
you have to do this. You don't get fined if you don't do it. You do it because you want to be a decent person and you don't want to leave that shit in the middle of a parking spot for the next person to hit or for the cart to be blown by the wind into somebody else's car. Like,
Yeah.
you do that because you want to be a good person. You want to be a contributing member of society. Nobody's telling you it has to be done. You just do it.
You just do it. Yeah.
Now there are people that don't, and that's fine too. But once again, it's self-driven. Nobody is forcing you to do anything. You have chosen to do or not do that thing.
That's right. Which I guess is why Aldi figured out the quarter.
You're right.
Right?
Yep.
That quarter is highly motivating. But you know what is funny to me? It's not. Have you ever been to Aldi? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Uh-huh. Yep,
Yeah.
yep, yep.
Okay. So I don't really care about getting the quarter back, but I care a hell of a lot about having that buggy, that shopping cart. So I need
Mhm.
the quarter to get the cart. And if I don't
Yeah.
put the cart back, I'm kind of obsessive about putting the cart back anyway because I hate people's cars getting dinged. But
Yeah.
if I don't put the cart back to get my quarter back and put that quarter in that spot in my car, then I know next time I go to Aldi, I won't be able to get a cart because I won't have my quarter. Because I
Mhm.
never have money anymore, like real money.
Right.
Yeah.
Like no
So
cash.
that quarter, exactly. That quarter has become incredibly important in my so much so that we got a new car and my new car doesn't have a quarter and I keep forgetting to put a quarter in that new car. Now I drive my old car to the grocery store because it has the quarter.
Oh my goodness, that's so
Yeah.
funny.
So
Oh, I love how you've adjusted. Like instead of just finding another quarter to put in your new car, you're like, "No, I'm just gonna bring the other car."
yeah, I'll bring the other car because it has the quarter.
Oh my
And
god.
yeah, I know. It's ridiculous, but it's just the truth.
No, we all do stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, just to kind of go back to your point that how self-driven are you? That I think that is a question that you need to ask yourself when going into or considering starting your own business or whatever it may be, starting a side hustle. Just how self-driven are you, and how quickly do you think you could change to become more self-driven? Because I'm not saying that if you're not self-driven now, you shouldn't do it. It's about personal development, right? Like, okay, if right now in this moment you discover, yeah, I'm really not self-driven, I am kind of negative. I already have in my head that this isn't going to work out. But you have the drive, the internal drive, once again, to change that about yourself. Or that makes it sound like you're trying to change your personality, but improve. Like if you make the effort to improve or
Is do
become
people
that.
do people change or improve though, or do they find a different way to motivate themselves? And here's what I mean. It's
You
like
know what? Yeah, you're right. Yes.
because like
Continue.
Andy joined me in Cooking Chew. She left her job, even though she still has freelance clients for healthcare. That's a different conversation.
Yeah.
Um, she left her job to come join me in Cooking Chew because she liked the idea of the freedom, right? And plus, it was always the
Mhm.
plan. But she is completely deadline driven, but the deadline has to be from an external source.
Oh,
So
okay,
she
yeah.
has really struggled to know that the deadlines come from us. But
Mhm.
now so it took her about a year. And it's funny because now um, she is somehow clicked in her brain that there is nothing on this planet, nothing at all, that is more important than getting a certain amount of published articles published at the end of every single day, to where she will move mountains to get those
Wow.
articles published. So much so that sometimes I'm like, we can't publish today because there's something wrong. And she's like, I don't
Yeah.
give a shit. We're publishing and you can fix it later. But it took her a good solid almost a year to get that internal switch. It's not like
Mhm.
she changed, just something about it. I think it's finally clicked with her that if we're not publishing articles, we don't make money. And if we don't make money, then she can't have the things that she wants, you know?
Right,
And
right.
so something just finally switched, but nothing about her personality changed. She just finally associated publishing to something that is critically important to her.
Mhm.
Does that make
No, you're
sense?
right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Like it
Okay.
totally makes sense because she has found what motivates her. And I mean, essentially she's figured out like a way to make a deadline seem like it was externally externally created, right?
Yeah, because basically she says Google's going to hate us if we don't publish these articles.
Exactly. Yes. So
Yeah.
I think that's a brilliant way of looking at it, because I never thought about it until you just explained it that way. So no, you're right. Like when you find out your motivation, you figure out how to make that work for you.
Right. Because she didn't change. Her personality didn't change.
Right.
She didn't necessarily, it sounds terrible to say, but she didn't grow as a person. She just figured
Of course
out,
she did. She grew
well,
as a person, just not in the way that we are used to defining. It goes back
right.
to the whole definitions, right? Like
Yeah,
what is your
exactly. That's what I
definition
mean.
of personal growth versus my definition of personal growth? It's we're using the same words, but our definitions
Yeah.
are different.
Well, I guess I think about it like I don't go to the gym. I don't work out consistently. But would I, if Jesus came down and looked at me in the eyes and said, Renee, if you don't start working out every day, everyone you know is going to die tomorrow.
Oof.
You know what I mean? I mean, I'm just trying to think of the
Yeah.
most extreme thing.
Yeah,
I get
right,
to
right, yeah.
live, but everyone I know is going to die if I don't go to the gym. Then I'm
Mhm.
probably going to go to the gym, but I'm not going to go to the gym because I suddenly became a gym rat. I'm going to go to the gym because the consequences of that are pretty fucking bad, right? So
Right.
yeah. So I guess I'm asking you because this is where you know a lot more about humanity than I do. Do you think people's personalities change, or do you think that the motivations surrounding the person change? I don't know. I'm just curious.
I mean,
Or is
I
there
am
a difference
a
in the end?
Pollyanna. I was going to say, I look at things with rose colored glasses, and I believe in the best in people, no matter how shitty they are. I mean, there are some pretty shitty people, but I have hope that they have the capacity to change or to understand or to empathize. I have hope, is what it comes down to. I don't know if I believe that anyone can change or whatever. I hope that everyone can change.
Well, I have an interesting, I don't know the answer to this, but an interesting way to bring this back to entrepreneurship. Um, you know those the personality types, right? Like
Uh-huh.
INFJ, all of that. Do people's personality, if you take a personality test every year, does your personality change or do you keep with the same one for the most part? Do you know what people end up doing? Do you happen to know if there's a, I'm sure there's a study on that.
There is a study on that. Well, and especially something like, oh, what is it called? Like the 16 personalities test. Where you find out if you're ENFP or ENFJ or INFP, whatever it may be, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, so I know that I need to find the source for it, because I don't like saying things with, especially if there's scientific studies.
Well, how about
Um,
you've heard a story once?
I remember reading something
There you go.
where, depending on the stage of life somebody takes that test, there are subtle changes. So the
Oh,
more in depth the personality test, the more obvious those changes are. But if you take a generic one, where it's like, here's 20 questions that you have to
uh,
answer, and it doesn't get into like the specifics of, are you more empathic or are you more compassionate or whatever it may be, you won't see those changes like presented in a metric.
yeah.
Does that
Okay.
make sense? So if it's a more generalized personality test, then you're not going to see a change. You're going to consistently get the same answer. But if you take the more in-depth ones, there are specific parts of your personality that do end up changing. And it may be a small nuanced change, but it is enough. It's enough of a change to show that, okay, something happened where their opinion or their approach changed right here.
Do you think since you left your corporate job, what year did you say? 2014?
2016.
2016. Do you think that your perspective on business has changed since then?
Oh, abso-freaking-lutely.
Do you think your personality has changed since then?
I think it has, yes,
How so?
definitely. Just the fact that, from if I look back at like 2016 or even before, like let's call it 2014 Nadja. If I look
Sure.
back and she was a different person or outside of me, right? So I would probably describe her as entitled.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. I would describe her as selfish
Really?
and unable to see the bigger picture.
That is literally
Because
the opposite of the Nadja that I know.
well, no, because like when I worked in a corporate office, my goal was always how do I make myself look better? How do I
Oh,
make myself look better so I get a raise? How do I make myself look better so that I look like the harder worker? How do I make myself look better in front of my peers? Like that was my approach to everything. And I never thought about I was I mean, I still am a little bit of a justice warrior. So if I saw somebody being treated or what I thought was being treated unfairly, I would just be like, "Oh, well, I don't understand why the manager is coming down so hard on this person, like they don't know what's going on in their life, and blah, 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 blah. What I did not know was from a business owner standpoint, there were certain things that they were looking at, like performance wise. Okay, this person is not meeting the same goals as everybody else. Like they're not scheduling as many appointments. They're not checking as many patient files. They're taking too long on the insurance calls. They don't have great customer service.
mhm.
Like they don't have a great customer service approach. So they're looking at it from a business standpoint. This is the reason why this employee isn't working. And I'm looking at it from well, this person is really nice to me. So I don't
Right?
understand why they're being so hard on them.
Isn't it funny how that changes everything?
It does. Yeah, cuz now my approach to everything and I tell my team this all the time is business, personal is personal. Like if we cannot separate the business from the personal, we need to really think about if we should be working together because, like business owner Nadja is going to be looking at things very differently from, your friend Nadja. Now, I will take the two into account and I try to approach things with a lens of compassion and empathy. But at the same time, like if it's going to affect the business in a negative way, that's going to have to be a hard decision and a hard discussion that we're going to have.
Well, and the funny thing about that, I talk about this quite a bit with my mom, actually. Um, the more that you get to know the people that you work with, like your team members and that such,
Mhm.
the more that you care for them, the more that you
Absolutely.
have to care for the business. Because if the business, like I right now, our business pays for 8 families
You're
plus
right.
the families of the freelancers,
Mhm.
right? Because we have freelancers for the sake of conversation work for us full time from the money that they earn from us, right? Even though
Right.
they're just freelancers. So 8 families plus the families of the freelancers.
Yep.
And if one person on the team is messing up the revenue for all of those families, then you have
Yeah.
to address that because otherwise
Exactly.
you're like, man, that's the nicest, funniest, funnest person I ever known, and I don't ever
Mhm.
want to give them a hard time or fire them. But if I don't, then I'm going to have to let all of these people go, which means
Right.
all of these families. So there's constantly that balance of I love this person so much, but holy shit, they're fucking up the business so bad, you
Yeah.
know? Um, and that sucks too because that's part of entrepreneurship as well.
Yeah, that's part of the ugly, messy part of entrepreneurship that nobody really talks about because yeah, you're right. You care for your team members. And I know that when you go into like if you go into a corporate environment And the first thing they say is, oh, we're like family here. Like that is a huge red flag in the corporate world, right? And the reason it's a huge red flag is because they are using, I mean, I'm sure it's not intentional, but what ends up happening is it's almost like an emotional blackmail. It's emotional manipulation because they're saying, we treat each other like family here. Would you tell your family member, "Oh, I can't take your shift this weekend because I have other plans." Like, would you say that to a family member who's asking you, "Can you take my shift because I want to do this, this, and this with my family," or whatever,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So there's almost like a level of emotional manipulation there, but with a small business that like when I talk about corporations, I'm talking about like multi-million dollar corporations that have 50 plus employees and like they have multiple products and locations or whatever. Like I'm talking
Right.
like big businesses.
Right.
But like with small businesses, it is difficult to separate the personal and business because they're so closely integrated. But if you personally care about that team member that is affecting your business, wouldn't don't you think that they would want to know too?
Well, especially if you're like family, because you don't want the family to
Exactly.
fail, right? So that
Yeah.
goes both ways. If we're like family here, then we got to be like a family, because sometimes the family has to come together and say, "Yo, this house is a wreck," you know. Yeah. Um. Do you need
Yeah.
to go? Do you need to go?
No, no, no.
Oh,
She
okay.
just she keeps opening the door. That's what the ringing bells are when
Oh,
the front door opens. I
okay.
have bells on my front door. She keeps forgetting that I want to call. So the reason, by the way, it is a Friday. It is a Friday afternoon. My
Yeah.
daughter is home, and the reason she is home is because last night we went to the rodeo. It's the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo,
Uh huh.
and we went to a concert on a school night. The performer was Lauren Daigle. She's a contemporary Christian music artist. Yeah,
Okay. Sure.
and the girls love her. They love her songs. So we were like, okay, well, you can go because my husband, he does the lights for rodeo, so
Right.
we can go.
Yeah. Totally.
But we got home so late last night. It was after midnight by the time we got home, and the girls were super tired. And so this morning, this is part of entrepreneurship and like what we're trying to teach our kids too is that their mental well-being is just as important as their physical well-being. So because the younger one was super tired, like she was very whiny and cranky and just like, my stomach hurts. I don't feel good. Like, I'm still very tired. We just decided, maybe take a personal day so you can rest, like sleep a little bit longer. So she went back to bed. She woke up much later. And now she's playing outside. And I think that's fine. I'm probably going to get people judging my parenting style.
Well, I do have two questions.
Go
Um.
ahead.
Okay. The first one is, if you still had a corporate job and this
Oh,
happened,
hell no.
what would you do? Well, how would you have
Well,
handled it?
this wouldn't have happened in the first
Well, no,
place if
no.
I
Let's
still
just
had
say
a
that it
corporate
didn't.
job.
Let's just say that she woke up in the morning for whatever reason. Let's just say there was the tornadoes flew through your
Mhm.
area instead of mine, and everybody was up all night.
Yep.
And she wakes up and she's super tired. As a corporate with corporate jobs, you may have been like, "Honey, I'm sorry, but you have to go to school."
Absolutely, yeah, she would have gone to school. I may have sent a note with her to give to her teacher that, she didn't sleep well last night, so she may be a little cranky and tired or whatever. But yeah, I wouldn't have kept her home because then that would have meant I needed to stay home and my PTO days are like gold. Like you don't
Right.
want to use them on frivolous well, what could be considered frivolous thing. And mental health, I mean, just to be really honest about it, like it is not important in the corporate world. It may be starting to change now, but back when I was in there, your mental, if you said, I'm feeling really overwhelmed, I just need a day to stay home, like that was not an acceptable reason to skip work. So you had to say, I'm sick today.
Well, and you're married, so you have a slight advantage too, because you have an incredible husband.
It's
And you
true.
guys probably would have had the conversation of which one of us would have stayed home with her, which one of us can afford to lose the PTO day, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so that
that
would have
that or because like you said, I have an incredible support system. I'm so fortunate and grateful that I have a support system to help raise my kids. Like, yeah, if I wanted to keep her home from school, I could have asked my mom, you know,
yeah,
if she
true.
was working, because if she wasn't working, then I could have asked her, hey, do you mind coming over and watching her, or do you mind if I take her over to your house or whatever? Because I would rather sacrifice like coming in late than taking
Mhm.
the whole day off.
Right.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. My approach would have been so much more different if I was still working in a corporate office.
Right. So this is one of the advantages of entrepreneurship, is that you got to
Absolutely.
make the decision to go to the concert in the first place, and then you got
Mhm.
to make the decision the next day. Now let's go to my second question, because I don't have kids in school post COVID. My kid's
Right.
gone now. She's grown.
Yeah.
Um, in school, you don't get PTO days. You get sick
Mm-mm.
days. So the
Well,
only
you get excused absences is what you get.
right. Okay. Whatever you want to. Okay. Great. That's what I'm looking at there. Excused absences. So
Uh-huh.
is an excused absence, I was at a concert too late last night and I feel like I can't handle school today?
Nope, this would be considered an unexcused absence unless I somehow could send in a doctor's note,
Right. Okay.
which I mean, let's be honest, I could get my
Well,
pediatrician
you
to write a
could.
note.
You
Yeah,
could.
I
That's not
could.
fair. You have an
It's
unfair
not
advantage.
I do.
And if you're listening to this and you're curious what that's about, many of her clients are doctors. So,
Yes.
yes, you have an unfair advantage in this conversation. But here's where I'm thinking about this, is that we're talking about the importance of having freedom to make mental health decisions for your day as an
Mhm.
adult. But we train our kids that the only excused absence from school is if you have a doctor's note.
Yeah. Mhm.
So,
No,
I mean, we have
we
to understand that we have to unlearn a lot of things in
right.
entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so that's actually that's something that we have been teaching our kids. So we do our best. I mean, I know all parents do what they can with the knowledge that they have. All of us are just winging it. Like none of us know what we're doing. We're just like, "Oh, we'll try this and see if it sticks or whatever," right?
Yeah.
But um so I the way I grew up, my childhood, I'm the only girl. I'm the oldest and I was brought up with a very Filipino Asian background. So I had a very strict parents. There were a lot of things that I just couldn't do. I wasn't allowed to, but my brothers could. Like they got away with so much more stuff than I did. I basically became the third parent because they would do shit that they didn't really get in trouble for. Like maybe they'd get oh, well, don't do that again. That was dumb or whatever. But then I would come along, hear what happened, and I'm like, no, you are going to get a lecture. Like, I'm going to tell you why this was wrong. I'm going to tell you why you shouldn't do it again. These are the consequences that could have happened or did happen. So
So
I,
this is
I
a cultural
essentially,
thing? Is this
it's a
Australian?
cultural thing.
I'm gonna ask a really dumb
No,
question.
it's not Australian.
What is it?
It is an Asian thing. I
I had
mean,
to ask
ask
because somebody can see our
yes.
faces. Yeah.
Ask other Asians in their 30s, like how they were raised, and you'll probably get a lot of the same responses. There was just not very open communication. Like, you just don't talk about things. Things were, it was do this because I said so, or you can't do this because I said so.
The thing is, hold on, hold on. I know parents from our generation, and I'm even older than you, so I can say a generation back, but that we got a lot of that. You and I got a lot of that growing up. But to be
Hmm.
fair, if you have, let's say that you have two parents at home, if you're fortunate enough to have two parents at home, both those
Right.
parents work a full time job, and they have to go to the grocery store, and they have to cook the food, and they have to wash
Hmm.
the sheets, and they have to buy the toilet paper from the store. Um, there's not a lot of time left to explain to your kid why something needs to happen.
Right.
So,
Well, are you sure? Is there not
well,
enough time?
I don't know. I mean, I'm just trying to give people a break, but
Yeah.
I don't know. But I feel like with entrepreneurship, bringing this back to I think entrepreneurs make better parents because they have more time to explain themselves to their children.
Yeah. No, I just think I don't know if it's a I
Which
guess
is
you could
a
say it's a
huge statement that
generational
I just said
thing.
that. But I was saying that, but just kidding. But I think the more procedures you write, the better you get at explaining to kids.
No, absolutely. Yeah, when you're forced to do that in your work, and that's the other thing. So maybe not just entrepreneurs, but people that work any sort of like operational position, right?
Sure.
So if you work in operations and you're having to manage multiple personalities and you're having to make sure that you have very clear instructions for every single person who have different learning styles, you do become a better parent because you've got that practice in the workplace
Yeah, I think
in
so.
terms of explaining and breaking things down so that it's simple to understand no matter the level of skill or level of comprehension that somebody has. Yeah, I think like if that is something that you do in work, no, whether it's in an office or in retail or as an entrepreneur, like if that is just part of your job description, you do become a better parent.
Communicator.
Yes, because of communication. And I think that's what it comes down to. Like, I think you and I have talked about this many, many times before, but like a lot of the world's problems, I think, could be solved if people just fucking talk to each other. Like, honestly.
Yeah.
So just say what you want to say and mean what you say, and then have a very clear and open discussion about it. Like, no judgments or anything like that. Like, this is how I feel, and this is how your actions have made me feel. That's
Mhm.
very diplomatic, right? But that's not reality. The reality is something happens and you are, I hate the word triggered, but you are triggered. And so you become immediately defensive, right? That's
Yeah.
usually the process. And so when, because I will admit, like, I do that all the time with my kids. But I recognize that I've done that. Like I've had a knee jerk reaction and now I'm just yelling at them. And I'll calm myself down and I'll turn around and apologize for my, you know, my outburst and then explain to them this is why I got so frustrated. This is, it wasn't exactly what you guys did or said or whatever it was. It's because I had all this other stuff going on before that happened. And that was just the thing that tipped me over the edge. So I try to explain it to them, but I also try to have them tell me, like, does that make sense? Do you understand like where I'm coming from?
So,
And if they say no, then, I open the floor and I say, okay, ask me questions.
yeah.
Like, what don't you get?
So going back to your corporate job, and when you would see a boss come down on someone, and you were judging it from your internal perspective at that time
Mm-hmm.
because you were just an employee.
Yep.
What do you think that a boss should do differently in those circumstances? Should they gather the team and explain themselves?
I mean, I think that that's a great idea. Like transparency, just in general, is something that management should be doing. So I also think compassion comes a long
Mhm.
way in terms of maybe don't like rain down on that person in front of everybody else because that's embarrassing. Like
Sure. Yeah.
that's something that if I am saying why is the manager being so mean to that employee, it's because they're doing it in public. But if it's a private conversation, that's a different story because then it's up to that employee. Like if that employee decides to share, oh, management was like shitting on me today. Okay, well, that was their story to share. That wasn't something that management had done and exposed it to everyone because they couldn't control their temper. So I guess that's just what I'm my I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Basically, have compassion.
Well, it makes me think, well, the reason I asked this question is because I'm going back to what you said earlier about we're a family here. And that's a
Uh-huh.
bad phrase, and we understand all the negative that that means in a business environment. But you just said something that I think would actually be a better phrase to say, we're transparent here.
Yes. Yeah.
We're compassionate here.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
compassion and transparency don't mean the same thing as family. It's just that
No.
I think that what people, when they say we're a family here, I think what they're trying to say is perhaps compassion and transparency. Maybe
Right.
not. Maybe I'm giving people too
Yeah.
much credit, but um because I had a situation yesterday um where we're like I said earlier, we're working on our processes and procedures, and I brought Tabitha is here in person with me, and the rest of my team is remote, and we had a new procedure, and I was seeing it on the site ready to on the article was ready to publish, and Tabitha said, I don't think this is in the right place. She asked me, and I said, no, it's not in the right place. I know what the process said, but now that I'm seeing it visually, I really want it to be somewhere different. And can you relay that to the content manager? So she, who nobody even knows that she's working in this process at all, I asked her to tell the manager something, and the manager comes back to her and says, no, no, this is how I want it to be. And I said, no, tell him that Renee said to do this thing. So, and all this was in public. And I really fucked up because what I should have done was stopped and, first of all, said, this is the content manager. This is the decision that he's made. So if I don't like his decision, I should go and talk to him privately. But I was in such a hurry because the tornado was coming that I said, no, Tabitha, please tell her this thing as we're running into the hall or into the closet. And I handled it all wrong. Because I was treating it like a family more than the business, maybe.
Yeah, but think about what you're doing now is you are reflecting back on something that had happened
Yeah.
and you're thinking about how to change that approach the next time something like that happens. And that situation that you just described, that is something that you can go back and say exactly what you just said. Like, I should have been more transparent. I should have communicated more that this is what was happening personally, which is why the message was being conveyed in this way. But it helps to relieve that whole thought process of nobody know, like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, and it's because there's transparency there, but also there's that sense of I guess maybe the in terms of like how it was being received, we don't know, or we can't control how other people react to the things that we say and do, right? That's
Right.
something that is completely out of our control. But we can control how we react to their reaction.
Yes. Yes. Very
And that
much
is
so.
something that we can control and change and, adjust, not necessarily change. We can adjust to that approach or whatever it may be. But no, like I think you saying instead of businesses saying that we are a family here, saying that we have compassion and
Transparency.
empathy, transparency. If we have compassion and transparency here, I think that is way better than saying we are family,
Yeah.
because we don't know. Some people may have really shitty families, and then they're like, "Oh,
Right.
I don't know if I want to work here if you're going
Right.
to treat me like family."
And when we think of families, we often think of dysfunctional people that want one another,
Absolutely,
right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Um, so yeah, I don't know if family is a good thing to bring into the business world or not. And
yeah,
I mean, we've been part of a business family before together that was highly dysfunctional,
yeah,
and it's not always the right way to approach it. So
yeah.
yeah, I don't want to get into
But
that, but
I was going to say once again, but people learn and change based on the experiences. So sometimes the shitty scenarios have to happen in order for us to adjust and learn from it and then approach the next situation in a less shitty way.
that's right. The next family in a better method.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. So going back to how you started this, you wanted to talk about how being an entrepreneur is not overly glamorous,
Mm-mm.
but sometimes it's sold that way. And I thought
Yeah.
it started with literally being sold that way.
Yeah.
Um, but do you think that entrepreneurship is also beautiful?
Oh, yes, 1,000%. Like I would happily go through the same scenarios, the same situations that I have been put through. I would happily go through it again because it's helped shape me to be who I am now. And yes, the next scenario or situation will change, and or it will change me because
Mhm.
like we went back. Um I am a different person every single time something happens, and that's because I try so hard. It's hard. It's a lot of like um mental gymnastics to like think about, well, how can I make this not be as bad the next time something similar happens? Um it requires a lot of self-reflection because you've got to understand that ultimately as an entrepreneur the buck stops with you, right? Like
Right.
anything that happens in the business that you are building, it it's ultimately all on you, whether you have a team or not.
Yeah. Let's talk
It's
for just
all on
I
you.
just want to say something to that that I think we haven't addressed yet. The name of this podcast is "We Are Not Safe for Work."
Oh yeah,
And
we haven't talked about that, have we?
right. Well, but and it just makes me realize, do you think for most true entrepreneurs there comes a point when they are no longer safe for work?
Oh yeah. I I would be a terrible employee now because I mean, like let's be honest, I would be the bad apple in the bunch
Yeah.
because if anything, like I as an employee, I was an excellent employee. And do you know why?
Why?
Because I was a people pleaser. I
Oh.
bent over backwards to make things easier for everybody else, even if it meant it was going to be much more difficult for me. And it wasn't from an altruistic place, it was because I thought that's how you're supposed to be
Oh.
in a corporate environment. I thought you were just supposed to do to make everybody else's jobs easier, right? So that's what I did. Did I complain about it? All the fucking time. Like
I
like
love that you were doing this thing, but you were
all
complaining
the
the whole
time.
time. Yeah, totally.
I was complaining the whole time. My poor husband had to hear about like how my shitty coworker did this, this, and this, and then I ended up having to do this work. No, it wasn't. That wasn't the scenario. The situation was they asked for help, and I just did it all instead of just helping or saying no. I don't have the capacity. No was so hard for me to say for the longest time. And
Mm,
no is a complete sentence. No, you don't need to
yeah,
justify or explain. It's just no.
right.
And if it wasn't for me diving into the entrepreneur realm, I don't think I would have been, I don't think I would have gotten to the point as quickly where I could start saying no without wanting to throw up.
You know what would be beautiful now? Now that you're good at saying no, right? Do you feel like you're good at saying no? That's what you're saying.
I am good at saying no.
Now, if you went back to a corporate job, imagine how fantastical it would be because you would show up, you'd do an excellent job at your job because you're supposed to and you understand how
Mhm.
important that is. But then anytime extra things were asked, you'd be so good at saying no and leaving at 6 o'clock that
Yeah.
you it would be so glorious. And
But
I don't
would it
know.
be accepted? I don't think
Oh
so.
no, no, I think you would be
I would
fired.
not I would not be seen as a team player.
That's right.
Like it's, oh, you're not a team player. You don't
Yeah.
help. You don't do this. You always say no. You don't want to take on extra work. That's why I am no longer safe for work.
Yeah, totally, totally. I don't think I was ever safe for work. I think I was never a very good employee. I mean, looking back, honestly, well, I was in some ways. I was fantastic, which is why I was always like, after 9/11, I had a series of jobs where I got laid off, and I was always the very last person laid off of
Mm,
all layoffs because I would just go in and try desperately hard to improve every single process. If there was something broken about a situation, I
yep.
couldn't stand it, and I would just dive in, even if it wasn't my own department, and work on solving it. So I made managers look so good that they didn't want to get rid of me,
Yeah. No, I was really good at making
but
managers
everybody
look
else
good too.
hated me. But everybody else just couldn't stand me
Yeah.
because I was
Did
so.
they did they think you were a brown noser too?
I think so, but also they
Yeah.
thought I was so procedural. I would be like, "No, no,
Right.
let's get back to work. Let's do this thing." Because
Mhm.
I've always had that mentality of, "Let's get back to work. Let's do this
Yeah.
thing. Let's get this stuff done. Let's do
Right.
this. Let's make it better. Oh my god, I see what you're going through. How can we fix that?" You know?
Yeah.
And so people hated me because they just wanted to chit chat all day. And I was like,
Right.
"No, no, let's do this thing."
Well, see, and that was me. I was the chit chat person. I don't think you and I would have worked well together in corporate. You no, I'm serious.
Yeah.
Like there's a reason why we met when we did,
Yeah, totally.
and we get along so well now, because of when we met. But if we work together in a corporate environment, I was the chit chatter. I wanted to have the social conversations, and if you were constantly telling me, no, let's get back to work, no, let's get back to doing this, I would be like, man, she's mean. She
Yeah.
doesn't want to, she doesn't want to
Yeah.
learn anything about me. Like in my head, as an employee, I would be thinking she's not a team player because she doesn't want to chat with the rest of the team.
Well, but see, I will say on the flip side, you give me a lunch hour, I would chat with you all. I mean, I had the social stuff so organized that I had it in my last corporate job where we would all meet in the conference room every lunch hour, bring our lunch. We had crochet groups. I had so much shit going
Oh,
on during the off time because I
yeah.
am so hyper social, but it's just that I saw the processes and procedures and
Mm-hmm.
how the things were running during the working parts. I just would get so zoned in on it and
Right.
care so much. But I'm such a social person that I needed those social breaks too. And then so management didn't know what to do with me because of
Yeah.
that. Because I would
Yeah.
have these hyper organized social times as well.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I don't know. I can't imagine anything but entrepreneurship at this point.
Yeah, I can't either.
I don't know
And
if I
I
have any other
mean,
choices.
right. I mean, I'll admit there are many, many times where especially after a hard day of managing expectations or dealing with clients, because when it rains it pours, right? So usually
Mhm.
when one client has an issue, for some reason all the other clients have issues too, and all of them are time sensitive, all of them need to be resolved right away. Like that's just how it goes, whether it is your clients or if you work in an office when you're working with other people, that's just the way it is. But for me, it was I mean, whenever I had those hard days, I would always have that thought of, it would be just easier if I went and got a job again. Like it would just be so much easier if I worked for a company or worked for someone else that just told me what I needed to do and when, and then I can clock in, clock out, and that was done. Like I don't
Oh,
take anything home
that
with
does
me.
sound so nice.
It does sound nice in theory, but then you think
Sure.
about the things that you like, the industries you would have to work in to have that type of, like, basically, like as a server, you
Yes.
don't take that work home, right? You
Right.
just you clock in, you do your job, clock out, and you leave. Then you're gone. You're not waiting tables when you get home or whatever.
Somebody
But
nobody texts you, "Hey, I need some salt."
yeah, exactly. Or I need more bread. Or
Yeah.
this soup isn't hot enough. I don't know. I don't know the things that.
Yeah. Right. Right.
But like the thought goes through my head, and as quickly as it comes into my head, it flies out just as fast, because in that split second of I should just go get a job, like that way I can just clock in and out, I then think about all the things that I would have to give up that I currently have to do that.
Yeah.
So that means I would not be able to drop off and pick up my kids from school. Like I
Right.
would not have the flexibility to do that. I wouldn't be able to take them to all of their activities. Like there's one activity where I actually have to pick up one of the girls from school 30 minutes early so that they
Oh,
can make it to their activity. I wouldn't be able to do that. We wouldn't
yeah.
be able to schedule, like the spring break trip
Right.
impromptu. Just, oh, you know what? We're going to do this. We're going to go on a road trip
Right.
because I would have to get permission first from somebody else to make sure that it works with everybody else that I'm working with.
Mm-hmm.
And if it is a job where you clock in, do the work, clock out, and you don't take it home, that's not something you can be like, oh, well, I can work while I'm on the road.
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
So, yeah. So like I said, as quickly as it comes into my head, it flies right back out. But I would be lying if I didn't admit that it happens a lot.
That you think about it.
I think about it a lot. Yes.
Now, have you ever had to cancel a trip because of being an entrepreneur? Because I have.
I'm trying to think if I have.
I've had to
I can't
cancel
think
plans
of a
because
situation.
I needed to solve a problem.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Canceling
Yeah.
plans. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
mean. So, like, canceling something because you needed to solve a problem.
Yeah.
So, with the extreme freedom also becomes extreme responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about it, I don't really think about getting a job per se. I mean, there are times when Andy and I are like, well, the revenue is so low that what would we do if it never comes back? Right. So, those are the
Yeah.
kind of things I have. Because I'm usually like, well, I guess I'd start over with another
Yeah.
one because no one's going to hire me.
Right.
So I have no choice but to start another business because this business failed. That's kind of where I'm at now is I don't see
Yeah.
any choices beyond starting another model of a different business, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um if I thought that someone would hire me at this stage, that'd be awesome. I'd be like, "Oh, thank God." For about a day until I wanted to
Yeah.
sleep in, you know?
Right.
But yeah, I definitely think I'm unemployable at this point.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah. Well, I
Uh,
think we should end this here.
Sure. Yeah, I think this is a great spot to end this conversation. Um, I don't think it's like on a Debbie Downer. It's more of
No,
a now we've explained why the podcast is called We Are Not Safe for Work.
that's right.
So
True.
maybe you see yourself in our stories and conversations. You experience the same thing. You have heard the same stories from other people and you're okay with it. Like maybe it'll help make you feel less alone because like we had touched upon earlier, entrepreneurship can be very lonely. And so
Absolutely.
just hearing other people go through or hearing the stories that other people go through and being able to relate to it, maybe it'll help make you feel less alone. And I mean, really, that's the goal, right? Like we want everyone to feel included and that they're not going through this on their own.
No, absolutely not. And I think that's a good point because I know that there have been plenty of dark days in the last decade that podcast are the thing that I listened to so that I didn't feel alone and I knew that other people were having struggles because some of my all-time favorite episodes have been when someone was like, "You know what? I really struggled or I'm struggling right now, but I
Hmm.
didn't stop."
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
there you go.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, go enjoy your child.
Sure.
She's outside, right, with the dog?
She's outside with the dog. Yeah. Actually, my mom just showed up. So
Oh,
she's outside with the dog and my mother in the backyard. They're probably or not they. My mother would not be climbing a tree, but my daughter would be.
so your daughter's probably climbing a tree. Your mom's watching your daughter climb a tree.
Yep, exactly.
And
Yeah.
what's your dog doing? Probably.
She's probably laying in the middle of the yard cuz that's what she does and she
Yeah.
watches them.
Oh, there you go.
She's like Nana from Peter Pan. She gets really upset if she sees them doing something that either seems dangerous or that if she can't see them and she knows that they're outside, she'll start barking. So she's definitely the Nana dog.
Well, I'm going to. I scheduled my smoothie to be delivered between 1 and 1:30. And so I'm gonna go have my
Oh,
smoothie,
go have your smoothie.
and then I have to go into a management meeting to address the thing that happened right before the tornado.
There you go.
Yeah. So
See?
that's what
And
I'm
now
doing.
you've had some time to reflect about it.
That's
So,
right. Yeah, this has been very helpful. So
yeah.
okay.
Well, awesome. Thank you for listening. You, Renee, and anybody else who's listening.
That's right. Whoever has some headphones on right now listening to this, thank
Yep.
you.
Yes, thank you. We appreciate it.
And we're very open to ideas as well.
Yes, please tell us what you want to hear about. We
That's
are open books. We are
We are-
happy to talk about all the things.
We're professional ramblers.
It's true. See, like this is the longest goodbye.
That's right. Yeah. Well, you keep going.
All right, and then end scene.